Hello, and welcome. It is Wednesday, December 9th, 2020, and this is Truly News. As we begin this new day, let's start by increasing your knowledge and expanding your insights with a review of today's news. As always, we begin with a look at the top stories from around the country. And here are the stories that are leading the news today. Today's headlines: U.S. awaits vaccine. Supreme Court rejects election challenge. Defense bill passes. Air travel declines. A decision by Trump to back certain vaccine manufacturers and not others means that the country is waiting in line for a vaccine. Pfizer, one of the companies Trump chose not to support, was the first to develop a vaccine, which is presently being distributed in Europe. Best estimates show that the U.S. will receive its doses in about 6 months. On Tuesday, the United States Supreme Court rejected a request by Republicans to throw out 2.5 million mail-in ballots and give Trump the win in Pennsylvania. The court found no evidence that would compel it to get involved in an effort to overturn votes cast by Americans in an election. Also on Tuesday, the House passed a $740 billion defense bill. The vote was bipartisan, with 335 in favor and 78 against. Trump has threatened to veto the bill due to a provision that will remove Confederate general names from U.S. bases. He also wants the bill to include unrelated legislation that would create legal liabilities for social media companies. In other news, air travel in the United States has begun to taper off after large numbers of travelers took to the skies during the Thanksgiving weekend. Spikes in COVID have continued since that time, and now the U.S. is once again seeing a decline in airline passengers. This week, airports reported the lowest number of travelers since July. And that's your top news for today. Now, in our look beyond the main headlines, let's begin with the latest advances in science, technology, and space exploration. In science news, potential supervolcano under Alaskan islands is discovered. New research, presented this week at the annual meeting of the American Geophysical Union, reveals the potential presence of a supervolcano beneath the islands of Alaska. The lead scientist, John Power from the U.S. Geological Survey's Alaska Volcano Observatory, says that an eruption would have global impacts. The underground supervolcano is visible on the surface as a cluster of 4 volcanoes. In technology news, European countries pass laws holding tech companies responsible for content. Since the start of the internet, tech companies have tried to maintain an online environment free from government interference. Porn, hate speech, and other harmful and illegal content is allowed to run free, under a broad definition of free speech used by tech companies to avoid liability. Now, some countries are pushing back and holding tech companies responsible for the content they post. In space news, China becomes second country to plant a flag on the moon. As part of its lunar landing mission this week, China became the second country to put its flag on the moon's surface. The United States left a total of 6 flags across the lunar landscape during its missions to the moon 50 years ago. Since then, no other country has landed humans capable of planting flags on the moon. This week, the unmanned Chinese lander used robotics to plant its flag. And that is your science, technology, and space news for today. Now we look at the latest in health, social, and environmental news. In health news, new drug shows the potential to reverse age-related mental decline. According to a new study published in the journal Health by researchers from the University of California, a new drug has shown the ability to reverse age-related mental decline. The results are from experiments done on mice, using a drug that restores mental abilities by stimulating the revitalization of brain and immune cells. The drug must undergo much more testing before potential human use. In social news, pets bring a sense of comfort to their owners during the pandemic. Research from scientists at the University of South Australia shows positive emotional effects for people who own pets during the pandemic. A recent study found that most participants spoke of the interaction with pets as being emotionally positive during COVID isolation. The presence of pets seemed to provide a sense of comfort as interactions with other humans became limited. In environmental news, Planet continues to warm as greenhouse gas emissions hit new high. A new report by the United Nations Environment Program shows that last month was the hottest average global temperature on record. The report also highlighted the fact that greenhouse gas emissions reached record levels last year. All of these factors are predicted to lead to a global temperature increase of 3 degrees Celsius, which is equal to 5 degrees Fahrenheit. And that is your health, social, and environmental news for today. Now, it is time for our look at economic and world news. In economic news, Washington leaders unable to agree on a relief plan to help struggling Americans. Amid the continued increase in COVID cases and increasing lockdowns due to struggling hospitals, Americans are looking for financial help. In the meantime, government leaders remain unable to agree on additional relief. This week, the House tried to push forward its proposed bill, the Senate remained opposed to House efforts, and the White House floated an idea for a $1 trillion package that the Senate would likely oppose. In world news, the United Nations prepares to work with Biden to address important issues. The head of human rights for the United Nations announced this week that the Biden administration has pledged to work with the UN to fix problems created under the Trump administration. At a news conference on Wednesday, High Commissioner Michelle Bachelet said she welcomed Biden's pledges to work on issues such as the separation of migrant families and systemic racism, which increased under Trump. And that is your economic and world news for today. To wrap things up, we take a look at your entertainment options with newly released movies, shows, and books. The newly released movies, today's movie is Arthur and Merlin, Knights of Camelot. A much older King Arthur returns home after fighting the Roman Empire, and he must reunite with Merlin to fight for his crown. Arthur and Merlin, Knights of Camelot is now available for rent on various streaming services. The newly released shows, today's show is Your Honor. A respected judge's son is involved in a hit and run that leads to a high-stakes game of lies, deceit and impossible choices. Episodes of Your Honor are now showing on Showtime and Amazon Prime. Finally, in entertainment news, our newly published book is Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Wall Kimmerer. A botanist and member of the Citizen Potawatomi Nation espouses having an understanding and appreciation of plants and animals. This book is presently number 5 on the New York Times paperback nonfiction bestseller list. And that is your entertainment news for today. To see today's new movie, show, and book, or to browse our previous reviews, visit the Truly News Daily Print Edition. The print edition is available at trulynews.org. There you will find all of today's news, with archives of past news that is searchable by subject. As always, we end our podcast with hope for humanity, stories about the goodness and kindness people show each other every day. And here's today's story. From Brainerd, Minnesota. One act of kindness leads to a sweet chain reaction of hundreds of acts. According to the manager at the Dairy Queen in Brainerd, Minnesota, a man paid for the car behind him in the drive-thru earlier this week. That person then offered to pay for the person behind her, and the chain reaction began. When word spread of the event, over 900 people got in line at the Dairy Queen over 2.5 days to keep the chain of kindness going. Person after person paid for the car behind them. And that is your news for December 9, 2020. Have a wonderful day.